Hey now, welcome to episode 34 of the Help Find the Others podcast. If you've been here all along, welcome back. But if this is your first time listening to us, well, welcome. I'm your host, Ruben, and also my buddy Stan is on the line. How you doing, man?
Doing great.
Awesome. This episode was really good, really positive. I really, Elaina was really, she just seems to seek the best, positive energy out of life as she can get and wants to spread that to others. I just get that feeling from her.
Yeah, no, definite positive energy. And it's crazy how when one person comes in with that, it kind of could take over the whole group. Yeah. Effortlessly too.
Yeah. And, we talk about diet a lot in this episode and it's the kind of thing where like, she's kind of the person you would want to be preaching about having a good diet because you're like, hey, she's so nice and happy. Like, what's she doing that's making her that way? And it's, diet's definitely part of that. So, definitely, hope you guys enjoy our talk about just diet and holistic health and psychedelics and everything. And I hope you guys enjoy Elaina. So Elaina, thanks for coming on and thanks for reaching out. Now you sent me a video explaining your 5 dried grams experience and similar to mine. And you found my video on YouTube, but why don't you just give us a little background of how mushrooms or other psychedelics came into your life and brought you to this point, I guess.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, I've experimented with mushrooms over the years. I would say for the last 20 years, off and on, probably more off than on. I had an amazing experience. Probably like the first time I did them 20 years ago, I was out in the desert with a group of people that we were doing a retreat with, and we all just took a bunch of mushrooms and were out there. And I think a lot of people have a similar experience, maybe the first time they do mushrooms, which is what I had, which is like being so in awe of being in a physical body. And so that experience was really profound for me. And I just remember crying a lot while I was laughing, couldn't even, the emotions just kind of dissolved into each other. And it was very just showed me how amazing it is to be physical. So that was that experience. And then, over the years, I've taken them smaller doses, just kind of more recreational and nothing ever super profound, but, let's see. So they just started to kind of come back into my life with the different people that I've been hanging around. And they're more in my field at the festivals that I've been going to. And I took some recently when I went to Sedona. I went on this, it was called an ecstatic dance bus tour. And you basically get on a bus with 30 people and drive through the Southwest and camp and do ecstatic dance at night. And it was pretty awesome. And so one of the days, a few of the people that I had met, 3 other people, we decided to do mushrooms while we were in Sedona. And again, it was a small dose, maybe 1 gram or 1.5 grams. And that was really another, it kind of just kept opening me towards messages that the mushrooms wanted to give me, or that I wanted to give myself through the mushroom consciousness, however you want to look at it. And so we were out just on this trail underneath, if anybody's been to Sedona, underneath Cathedral Rock, the backside, and there's this stream. And my friend was a musician and he came up with this song while we were together. And I remember putting my head on the back of his heart. And this is the first time it's ever happened that I could actually, as he sang, I could listen through his back, and the song turned into colors. And it was just it started turning into shapes and colors as I listened. And so this whole sound thing started to become alive for me. And that journey, I really got, it was really cool because I was out there, and every time someone would say the word bones, my whole body would light up. I'm like, bones, bones, keep saying the word bones. And then I started to get this download about us, how our bones are crystal and in structure. So they're basically, they're receptors, like crystals are. Crystals are in computers, they're in phones, And so I just was getting this message like, we are crystalline bones, and we're emitting signals, but we're also picking them up from everywhere. And then, you know, how so many people are infatuated with crystal skulls. Well, after that, I became infatuated with crystal skulls, and I just had to find a crystal skull. And then I just started realizing, oh my God, our heads are like these crystal skulls. And it became super alive for me. And I'll just keep going with this unless you have questions. I'll kind of lead into the 5G, 5 gram journey, 5D, 5 gram.
Yeah. Well, so do you think, because there's like an idea that I've been playing with, trying to, I was going to make a video to talk about it, but I haven't really kind of nailed down everything I want to talk about. But it's the idea of like vibration. And, we've talked about like kind of the singing on psychedelics before. And I think one of our guests said that, why it can help some people is it's breath control. But I think it has a lot to do with vibrations, which, crystalline structure, that has to do with like kind of the atomic vibrations being at a certain frequency, maybe, or whatever, form the atoms into a crystalline structure. So do you think maybe that like is kind of what you were feeling with the bones thing, is like the vibrational like resonance, and that it's maybe, struck you as being crystalline?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying our bones are actually crystals, but it just like the message came through that, I mean, our bones are a completely different density than the rest of our body, obviously, and it's what holds us up. And, if you've ever seen a broken bone out, like from an animal out in the desert or whatever, it has that kind of shaly look to it as it dries, and like a selenite crystal kind of. Like I could relate it to that. And so it's just more of I don't know the science of it. It's just more like this, how strong our bones are. I mean, those skeletons last forever. People find them thousands of years later. So there's just something super, I think, magical about the fact that we have these bones inside of our body, and that they can pick things up. Like think about when you're laying on the ground and you could hear like through your ears, like footsteps coming, which you normally wouldn't hear if you were just standing up. Like something about that, like how the bones in your head are picking up the sound through your ears. And I don't know, it's just kind of, I can't really give it anything other than it's just trippy to me.
Yeah. Well, it's an amazing evolutionary adaptation at the very least. I mean, we would be blobs on the ground if it wasn't for that. And it is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And the crystal skulls, you said you got into crystal skulls. Have you read about like the crystal skulls that they found all over the world, and they have no idea how they were made and stuff like that?
Yes. And actually someone came, I'm in Bend, Oregon. Someone came here with it, and I didn't go on that night, but the friends of mine that went were just blown away, like by the energy of it and by how amazing it was. And then I also got, when I was in Sedona at another time, because I've spent quite a few times in Sedona, there was a place called Angel Valley that had a bunch of crystal skulls. And so like I've had exposure to them in different ways, and it's always been kind of a periphery thing. Like I knew they were interesting, but I didn't know why. And then like with the mushrooms, I finally just, it's kind of like that something clicks into place, like, oh, these are important.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if it was like an Ancient Aliens show episode or whatever, but it's one of those things where like if you don't really pay attention to it, you're like, okay, yeah, so it's just skulls made out of crystal, whatever. But the ones that like archaeologists have found that they've done all this testing on and are literally like, we don't know how these were made. Like there's no tool markings and whatever. And it's a really intriguing thing of like, well, wait a minute. Okay, what the hell are they then? Like, because you could just write it off as some piece of art or whatever, but it definitely seems to be, from the people that have studied them, that it's not art, and if it is, it's an amazing piece of art that is unknown how it was made. It's a pretty cool rabbit hole to go down on the internet.
Yeah, I agree. And the people that are the guardians of these, like this person that brought it to Bend, like they consider it sacred. Like it's super important, and they want to bring it like for visitations to people. So
Yeah.
yeah, there's definitely people are kept picking up on whatever that is, and I don't know what that is.
Yeah. I know Dan Aykroyd is really into it, and he actually, I don't know if you've ever seen this. He owns a vodka company that pays homage to that, and the bottle is like a clear glass skull, and that's his vodka company. I don't know if you've seen that.
I haven't, but that's cool. I'm going to look it up now.
Yeah, he's really into kind of out there stuff, and he's had like alien and paranormal encounters, and in fact I believe that's even like why he wrote Ghostbusters and stuff like that. Like it was part comedy, but it was part like his belief in the paranormal.
Yeah. Oh, that kind of makes sense. And it just made me flash to a scene that I remember him being in where I think he was, I forget which movie it was, but yeah, I mean, I can totally see that he's definitely always been a little esoteric.
Yeah. No, he's pretty cool. I heard him on Joe Rogan's podcast and was like, oh man, I like Dan Aykroyd as a comedic actor, but I actually like him as a, as a fellow weirdo as well,
Fellow weirdo. I love it. Okay. I'm going to look that one up on Joe Rogan. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
But yeah. So, your video you sent me talking about your 5 gram experience, I thought was a really, really good video, really heartfelt and sounds like an amazing moment. Why don't you tell us about that story?
Well, yeah. So then after that Sedona thing, I ended up going to a crystal show here in Oregon, and I just wandered around the whole time looking for crystal skulls, and I ended up finding one that was really awesome because like when you turn it over, there's like the raw crystals are inside the skull, and it's just kind of parts of it are open. It's not like a complete skull. So it was really cool. So I bought that, and then I just kept getting these messages that it was time to do, a heroic dose of mushrooms. And I didn't really even I didn't have anybody that had done it. And so then I got online. I mean, anybody like close to me in my life that had done it. And I got online and started looking at some stuff that people were saying, like Terrence McKenna and stuff, but I didn't want to research it too much because I just wanted it to be my experience. And so, just kind of, I ended up doing, taking them and grinding them into a powder and shaking them in lemon juice for 20 minutes because I do tend to get a little bit sometimes queasy on mushrooms. So I had read that someone had done that, and it takes out the, you strain out the mushrooms, although I didn't strain them out, but it takes out kind of like the nausea part and the discomfort. So I did that. And luckily I had already kind of gone up and set my whole room up. All the blinds were closed. I had blackout curtains because it was only 4 p.m. And I had a playlist kind of on my phone ready to go. And then anyway, so I got in bed right after I took them, and they kicked in almost immediately. Like psychedelics just already started happening, and it didn't take long for it to get really intense. And so it was interesting because I had this playlist all planned, and the music just sounded awful to me. I couldn't figure out my phone, as you know, when you're on that large of a dose. Like, what is this thing? Like, And so I was able to turn it off at least. And then, so what happened because of that is I just started singing. And I hadn't read anything that, I guess people said that Terrence says somewhere to sing if you're uncomfortable. And it wasn't about that at all. I hadn't read that, but I had just started taking voice lessons. And so I think there was some part of me that was like, you need to start using your voice more. And I had done some breath work where the voice really got activated, and I was just kind of speaking in tongues, all this voice stuff has been coming up. And so I just started singing. And what was interesting is the first kind of message that started coming through, and I felt like it wasn't me, my brain singing. It was just something was singing through me, giving me messages through my voice. That's what it felt like. Here's your downloads, and you're going to be singing your downloads tonight. And it was about the earth. And so I started starting just to sing things about the earth. And it's no, it's not earth, it's Gaia. It's not, then it's no, it's not Gaia. It's a sound. It's a sound. And then I just started from the really the depths of my core, just singing this deep, I'm sure it was so loud, just singing, my whole room was probably resonating with my voice of just talking about the resonance and the sound of things. And then it started going into like my voice started talking about how English is a spell. And I mean, we even use the word spell to spell a word. And it was like, it's a spell that we weave so well. And like, so the message was like, be careful because English can create spells. Like when, like whatever we're saying is, you know, it's powerful. And I've always kind of known that. I've played around a lot with like, you know, that speaking, you know, our words have resonance and you shouldn't talk smack about people or say things that you don't want to attract. But anyway, so that started going on for a while. And then it was like, I switched over to Spanish because I know enough Spanish, and then I started singing in Spanish. And then I realized like all the Icaros for like, if you're doing ayahuasca and even Wachuma, which is San Pedro, all of those songs are in Spanish because there's just such a lyrical thing to Spanish, but also like it's a truer language, according to what was coming through me, that it's a truer language and a more profound language. And that Sanskrit is also like a beautiful language that has more truth in it. And so like, I don't even really still know what to make of all that, other than I know that, you know, English has so many words that can mean the same thing, or like the same word that can mean different things. And it can get very confusing, especially for foreigners when English isn't their first language. Yeah. And yeah, so I just tripped out on that whole English thing for a while. And then, so I had that crystal skull next to me, and it was really interesting because it was like, I mean, the psychedelics were going crazy at that point, and I was seeing a lot of skulls, and I don't know like what a lot of people see. And I've asked a couple friends, like if they've seen a lot of skulls, and everybody was like, I'm not sure. I don't know. But like the skulls, but they were very benevolent. It almost felt like Day of the Dead type skulls that were coming through, just multitudes of them. And, but then like when it would just get like a little bit too much for me, I would grab that cold crystal skull that was next to me on my bed, and it was really grounding for me. And I also had, I mean, and I'm saying this because in case anybody's listening that wants to do a journey, like these things were really helpful to me. I had a big, like I always take water to bed with me. So I had this big like mason jar full of water, and instead of drinking it, I kept sticking my hand in it and then like putting it on my face. And I was like, okay, I'm here. Just to kind of feel that I was here. But the water was really helpful because I think it was like it was an element, you know, that was something I could tap into. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, I mean, I think in my 5 dried gram video, I think I was talking about, I took like 3 or 4 like cold showers to kind of ground me. But like, I mean, partly I was just profusely sweating too, but it was like the water, just like everything else felt weird, and the water felt grounding and safe, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. I think just there's something cleansing and purifying also about the element of water. So you were able to get up and walk to the shower during that time?
Well, I would say I time traveled to the shower. I don't really remember getting in it. You know, it's like there was several times I just found myself in the shower. You know, like, I don't know. It's just a weird, like about 50 different things happened in 50 different places in the matter of like an hour. And, you know, it's just like, I would kind of be like off in this infinite headspace and then be like, oh, now I'm in the shower, you know, and oh, this feels good. And then it would be like back in this infinite headspace, and then be like, oh, now I'm in the kitchen flicking the light on and off. Cool, you know, and then
oh like, yeah, I remember you saying that.
You know, yeah, and just like kind of random things that like I didn't know how I got there or why I was doing what I was doing, and you know, it was much like you said how quickly it came on, and I did the lemon tech as well. You know, and I talk with a lot of people and suggest that, but that is a you know, a thing to let people know, is like, it's going to hit really hard when you do it that way. And, you know, you said you had your room all ready to go. I didn't, because my normal routine was to like just eat the mushrooms and then get everything ready. You're like, you know, often my routine is to like eat mushrooms, take a shower, then lay down, let them come on, like to kind of pass the time. And I didn't have anything ready to go, which I think like just kind of leads to that bad setting almost, because you're already in a frantic, chaotic, kind of trying to get things done state. And then when the mushrooms kick in, they just kind of perpetuate that. So, like you said, having everything ready and good to go, even when it does hit you as hard, is a better situation to be in. But, yeah, no, I definitely remember drinking water and showering. It was just a very, like, water's, it's an amazing substance.
The drinking seemed to kind of activate things too. I noticed every time I drank some water, when my hand wasn't in it and I was drinking it, but that kind of was like, it just kind of, I think it's good to kind of like change things up a little bit. And so what I was noticing also while I was still in my bed before I crawled to the bathroom at some point, is that like reality being really malleable. And it's just the only way I can describe it is like, I felt like there was these messengers there that were telling me these things. Like, you think that reality is one thing. You think that like, this is your life and that things just happen. And it's like, I was just using, like in my mind, I was getting the message of pushing your finger against something. And it just like a ripple of change. Like all you have to do is push your finger at it. And it's like, and just turns into something else completely. And like, I was really like just kind of tripping on that. And it was making me think of one of those, the Amanita mushrooms, the red and white ones. And I've actually one time when I was on San Pedro came across one of those under a tree, and it seemed like so luminescent to me, because when you're on San Pedro, like things light up and become even more amazing. Like all the plants are like talking to you. They're literally like, you feel like you could have a conversation with them. And I came upon this Amanita mushroom, which I have never done in my life. And I've never seen one since in the wild. And like, I started poking at it, and it was doing that same thing where it's like, I'd poke it and it would jiggle, and then I would giggle like, oh my God, this is so funny. And then I would poke it again, and it's like we were having this conversation and giggling. And that's what it kind of felt like. I was like, oh my God, reality is like this giggle. Like you can just push it and it just like moves. And so like kind of understanding that we're so dense here, in this physical world, like we make it so solid, but it's really way less solid than we think it is. And that was kind of what was coming through for me a lot.
Yeah. I mean, that's very true. Like, I think not just from the matter that we think it's solid, but it's actually not, we're so much percent of our body's water, and so much percent of, our body is made up of different little organisms and stuff like that. But, it's also like our lives aren't that solid as solid as we think either, like that's something I've like realized in my life, especially in the past, I don't know, 4 or 5 months, where it's like, I thought I was on one path, and I was really solid, had a solid plan. And letting go of that idea and not being more fluid and open to saying yes to things or whatever, or trying new things, and being more fluid in your life seems to be lead you to the right path more than just standing there trying to stick to what you planned out or whatever. So those are the kind of things that, the lessons we learn during a psychedelic trip can seem silly, like you're pushing a mushroom or whatever. But as you integrate that, as you go, what does this mean to my life? This is obviously a lesson I was learning. Then those are the kind of things that you're like, maybe that's what that means, or whatever.
Yeah, and I think that's why you had that synchronicity, like with the flaming lips, because it was just showing you like, there's no way this could have happened if you would have planned it. It's just like, just showing you like reality is just so funny.
Yeah. We're all just floating around, bumping into each other,
Yeah, exactly. And so another part of that night is that I really, and I don't know if you experienced this, but when I started, like, so after like, I think it was about the 4th hour or maybe the 5th hour, you start to actually be where you can kind of take a breath and like, okay, I'm kind of coming back into the room. Like, I'm feeling like a human again. But then I just went into this deep, deep gratitude. And all I could say, and I kept saying, like, my whole experience was verbal. Like, I was just saying everything out loud. And I was like, I am so lucky. I am so lucky. And I'm just bawling. And I had, luckily, next to my bed, a big box of tissues. And I was just bawling and like how lucky I am. And I really thought, I think that it was like I was saying, I was lucky to be in a physical body, like that I get to have this human experience, because not everyone does. And so I was just really having this profound gratitude, just deep, deep gratitude for life, and like not taking anything for granted, like not taking my body for granted. And then, oh yeah, then I started to feel my body. Like I was laying in my bed, and like over my life, I've had times where I've kind of body bashed and thought like, oh, you're too fat, or you're too this, or you're too that. And I was feeling it, and it was like, look at you. You are so beautiful. You are so amazing. And it was like another voice was saying to me, look at you. Look at you. You're amazing. You're here. You have this body. So it just gave me total body appreciation. Like, wow, I am so grateful for this body. And so that was just a really sweet moment for me. And I do keep that in my memories. Like, you are so lucky to be in physical form right now in this time and this day and age, and like just this time on the planet and just all of it. Like, we're all so lucky to be here.
Yeah. That's, we're one of our next podcast episodes, Stan and I were talking about that we do without a guest before the end of the year. We were going to talk about, kind of a recap of our 2019 and what we're looking forward to and planning for 2020 in our lives. And, I was thinking about, okay, what do I, looking back on 2019, what is, my most important lessons? And that word gratitude has been the biggest shift in my, direction in life, honestly. It's, it kind of started with, my wife. I don't know if it was an intentional, like, New Year's resolution, or if it was just something she was going to do and run with it. But she, she's a big Facebooker, and she has posted every day this year, starting from January 1st till now, has posted pictures and, three things that she's grateful for that day, and what that day made her think of. And, I saw a big change in her attitude and just, kind of what she's getting out of her life in this year, where nothing much else has changed in her life other than her perspective, and so, after seeing a very obvious change in her demeanor, like, I started being like, well, I wasn't going to post something every day, but I was like, we started on our Discord server, our social media thing through for this, channel and podcasts and stuff, a channel on there where everyone gets on and posts what they're grateful for. And, I don't do it every day, but I definitely, when I'm in a moment of gratitude, like, that's the first thing I do is go on there and be like, man, I'm really grateful for this, and not doing it every day, but just making sure I, like, hold myself accountable to, like, capture this moment and share it with others that care about, how our community is feeling. It's just been a steady climb towards the positive side of life from that point. It's like the key is to not just take the good things in life for granted, but to stop and think that, wow, I'm really lucky this is happening to me right now, because nothing is guaranteed, and it's like the moment the universe senses you're appreciative of that, it gives you more, and it's, I know for a lot of people that maybe are depressed, and I know I can get this way too, where you're like, there's fucking nothing to be grateful for. Like, you're down on yourself, thinking you're not worth anything or whatever. It sounds stupid to be like, well, be grateful for the good things, but it's one of the biggest things in this year that I've noticed, and I have to carry that into my life going forward, and yeah, gratitude is just, it's almost a law of physics. It feels like,
Yeah, I think you're right. Like, so that's the thing. Like, that's what I got. I'm like, wow, how could I ever not be grateful? Like, and I know what you're saying. Like, sometimes we just have these crappy days and it's just hard to find things to be grateful for. But I've experienced the same exact thing, the more grateful I am in life. And I have a gratitude jar in my kitchen and I love writing 3 things. I kind of do this 3 thing too. And I put it in the jar and I fill it up with the little sticky notes, those, those colored, I don't know what you call them, but things that have the little sticky
Post-it
edge.
notes.
Post-it notes, yeah. So like you fill it up with different colored ones and it's just really beautiful to look at this jar full of great gratitudes. And yeah, I feel like that's life changing. And so that came in so strong, like just be grateful every day.
Yeah, it's and I've talked to a lot of people that have had that message, whether on mushrooms or other psychedelics, and I haven't. That's just been a message I've gotten through life. Like I've never. Well, I've been grateful of like this moment. I've felt like this moment, this now is the only. On psychedelics, I've been like this right now is the best thing that's ever happened, and like, and I've had these moments where I'm like, okay, so every time I've been depressed, I've been worried about things that already happened that I can't change. And every time I've been anxious, I'm worrying about things that may or may not happen and I can control if they happen or not. But whether I've been depressed or anxious, I have not been living in the now. And that's what I like about mushrooms and psychedelics, whether they teach you lessons or not, they slow time down to a crawl and let you just exist right now, and it's the same thing that, and we talk about this all the time, that there's many paths to the same realizations. Right. And it like, the same thing that people are trying to achieve with meditation or yoga or anything like that is to just be grounded in the now. And that's what mushrooms do. And psych, and acid and stuff like that. That's what they do, is like, just, they, grab you and they're like, you are existing right now.
Because all you can do is be right here, right now, because there's nowhere else to go.
there's nowhere else. And that's where gratitude comes into play so much, is like, now is amazing if you let it be, right? And you have to be grateful for that, because there is no guarantee that anything would work out to lead you up to now. Anything could have happened at any second for now not to happen. And you have to be grateful for that. There is, someone every second who doesn't get to have now. And you have now, and to be aware of that and to be grateful of that, the universe, that's the key to pleasing the universe, pleasing God, pleasing whatever you want to call it. It enjoys you enjoying now. And that's what mushrooms do for me. Unfortunately, I don't let go enough. And this is something I've been trying to realize and I want to get more into with you, because you seem to have very like blissful experiences, to where like I tend to have with a psychedelic a very tough time. Like, and I think I drag too much of my like dumb bullshit from life, whether it's money or career or self-doubt or whatever. I don't let go enough in psychedelic experiences, and I drag that in and let it corrupt my now. And I that's one thing I wanted to ask you, and we can continue telling your 5 gram story if you're not finished too. But have you, or in that experience, do you experience any anxious, scary moments with mushrooms, or did you on your 5 gram experience?
I didn't. And I think I said this to you in the video that I sent you, which is funny because I sent that while I was driving, flying down the road at 80 miles an hour. I was recording myself. But I feel like, so I live my life, like my company's called Pure Joy Planet. And I live my life in a way where I just try my best to be present. Like I meditate every day. I do other biohacks like cold plunges, and that like clears your energy field. It almost cleanses your aura in a way, because your whole nervous system gets reset while you sit in this pool of freezing water. And I exercise regularly, which I think that just releases stress. And I know a lot of people say that, but it like becomes a thing where it gives you euphoria. But I also try, like in my life, and I've been working on myself for, I would say, at least the last 20 years. I'm going to be 55 in 2020, of really being super like present and conscious. And of course I'm not always, but like really aware of the language I speak and how I speak of others, and like how I'm being in life. And even down to the thing of like not arguing with people, like trying to have really good, like having people in my life that are willing to communicate clearly. And it's not always possible because we run into all kinds of people, but I think all those things help me. Because and I think I told you this in the video, that when I went into that day, like I felt like I was clean. Like I didn't have any people in my life that I've been arguing with, or there was no bad thoughts or feelings. And I also think my diet is helpful, because I eat a super clean diet, and we can talk about that. But all those things help. And I don't really experience anxiety in my life, and I don't really experience a lot of negative things like thoughts. Of course I have stressful times, but I feel like it's easier for them to come and go. And it wasn't always that way. And I think I've just been working on myself a lot.
Yeah. I mean, I think, don't you feel too, Stan, like that's kind of, we started this podcast, like kind of just like, hey, let's do this. And my, kind of piggybacking off my videos and being like, I don't know, but don't you kind of feel like our channel and our Discord and like are just kind of the message of our movement or whatever has been that like holistic working on yourself, and psychedelics being a part of that?
Yeah, I think it's just secondhand with psychedelics. I think there's something intrinsic within the whatever you deem a psychedelic, whether it be like, if you're taking acid or mushroom. I think something within that message is to look towards alternative ways of dealing with your stress or anxiety and whatever your issues are, and just working on yourself in alternative ways that you hadn't thought before. And I think in our Western society, the first turn isn't to, yoga, meditation, and holistic practices. And I think that's just kind of all part of it, and it's definitely been part of our message for sure.
Yeah. And, and I think like that's been the importance of our Discord, is it's like that group to lean on, as with anything, even if you're not trying to do it for psychedelic reasons, if you're just trying to get into working out, like it's hard to do that without a support group, and like that's what I feel like kind of, a lot of times, especially with the wall of gratitude on our Discord that I was talking about, or, we haven't been doing it that much with the daily ritual stuff, the different channels we have on there, it's almost like this holistic health support group. And, and that's where I think like you said, for 20 years, you've been working on yourself. It's almost like when you get to that point and then you take mushrooms and take them with intent and do all the proper things like you did. Once you've got yourself there, the mushrooms, are like, okay, now that you're clean, now that you're ready, like now we can really show you the bliss that there is, that you're not seeing because all this other stuff is in your way. And, that's watching the video you sent, that's kind of what I was thinking, is like, God, she's getting out of it what I want to, and what I talk to people, and what other people are as well. But a lot of people that are drawn to my channel and my message are striving for that as well. And they're asking questions like, I freaked the fuck out when I did 5 dry grams, and your video sounded like you did too. So what have you learned? And that's kind of where we're at. So that's why
we're learning from each other.
Yeah. And that's where I was really eager to have you on to kind of, not only have you be a voice of how blissful this experience can be, but also like to talk about, all the things you've done to get to that point, as That's what we're all trying to do. I feel like, you know.
And I mean, I will say there were moments of intensity, but it was never scary. And I think because I knew I was held, like I really trust myself and I trust life. And I guess that's part of it too. Like that we got to get to a place where we trust life. Like we trust that we're not going to put ourselves in harm's way and we're not going to sabotage ourselves. And when we get to that place, I think the mushrooms show us ourselves, don't you? Like they show us parts of ourselves that we still need to work on, or that like,
yeah.
I mean, it's just basically our consciousness. The mushrooms are awakening us to our own consciousness to show us, okay, here's some pieces for you to still look at. And I mean, I definitely got some pieces around like be super clear about your language. Like, so I'm still working on that. And each time you're just going to get, I think I've heard a lot of people say it just gets better each time or you have completely different experiences because like whatever you're showing up as, it's going to reflect that to you.
Yeah. And that could be scary, you know, because we lie to ourselves so much, you know, like we can be like, oh, that's okay. That's not a problem that I, you know,
smoke cigarettes all day long.
Smoke cigarettes or we can lie to ourselves and be like, whatever, you know, look at this guy, he did it and whatever. And we ignore the messages, you know, and there's been so many mushroom trips I've had. Like I'm reminded of one that we talked about. A really good friend of mine came on the podcast and we talked about a trip that we had together where it was just him and I. We went up to my place in New York and we met through work. We were extremely close and I mean lifelong friends, and we met as coworkers, but we were coming towards you know what maybe we didn't see coming, but both of us were coming towards a like this part of our life has to end, this job, which means that our friendship, you know, will not be an everyday thing anymore. I mean, we will obviously still remain friends, but both of us need to move on from this job. And for various social and economic reasons, but also for some physical reasons that we were kind of ignoring and lying to ourselves. Like, it's not that bad. It'll go away or whatever. And one for me was my back, and back pain and back problems in my family. It's the, you know, it's a curse. Like my whole family has spinal stenosis and every male in my family, and it's just ruined their life. Well, it didn't ruin my brother's life, but you know, my dad, it ruined his life at least. And so it's always been in my mind, like your back's going to start hurting at some point. You're going to get old enough, you're fucked, you know, and then your back's just going to be fucked. And so it's always been like there, but I kind of was just like, screw it, whatever. It doesn't matter. I'll just keep doing what I'm doing, you know, take Tylenol, aspirin every day, whatever, you know, just get through the day. It doesn't matter. My friend had like breathing, snoring problems. Like he had like problems with his nose. Like it was blocked, or I can't remember what exactly it was. Well, anyway, we take this trip and we were just, you know, trying to be two dudes in the woods tripping. Like we didn't really have an intent. We didn't really, you know, it was just whatever, let's get out of town and go trip. Both of us, the come up was pretty intense. And for whatever reason, as soon as the mushrooms kicked in, our symptoms kicked in, my back and his nose, to just levels that I couldn't get up off the ground. I was just laying flat on the ground and couldn't get up off his blanket. And he couldn't talk. He like couldn't breathe. Like like his nose was, you know, he said he felt like there was a hook like just through his nose, and all of this pain and stuff was centered in his nose. And after like the come up, maybe, you know, 20 minutes, half an hour, that kind of subsided. And then we were able to like walk around and stuff like that. I ended up taking like a Xanax because like it was this loop of like back pain, anxiety over back pain, going forward in my life, family stuff, back pain, family stuff, life, back pain, you know, this loop where I had to take a Xanax to kind of like just calm down. And then like once that kind of started kicking in or whatever, we were able to walk around. But then we like totally had these in-depth conversations about our individual conditions and what we were going to do to like remedy it, and how we had to remedy it, why we had to remedy it, and all this stuff. And like he ended up having to have like some little minor, outpatient surgery and fix his nose, and he's been way better, and it's, had a better life since, and everything. And I started going to like a chiropractor and working out and eating better, and just like it that was like the last moment of like, okay, I can't just eat and do whatever I want. Now I need to start like working towards this, and honestly, like I've tripped since then. That was the last trip I needed for quite a while. Was that one, just for that physical component, and diet especially. So that's one thing I wanted to talk to you about too. That you're like a dietitian, or what exactly is your expertise in that area?
So I coach people on how to get off all the foods that are inflammatory, which is exactly what you're talking about with your back. Mm-hmm. Basically, my courses or my program is focused on plant-based, which means no animal products. And although I don't consider myself a vegan, it's just that I think that a plant-based diet, like a lot of plants, is really healing, and getting people off of things like dairy and grains, like grains in general, especially things like wheat and bread, because those kinds of products can really inflame and exacerbate any physical ailments that people have. And then I just get people on like what we call clean eating. So, no processed foods, no white sugar. They're still allowed to use things like honey and stevia and like maple syrup, but they're just like, we're getting them off all these high sugar foods and like processed things and fast foods, and like just showing them how easy and delicious it can be to make your own food and to eat super healthy foods. And then what we get over and over again is testimonials of people that are like, I couldn't walk up my driveway, and now I'm like running. Or, I had this knee injury my whole life, and the pain's totally gone. Or like someone like you, like I've had this back issue and it's gone, because so much of that is related to inflammation. And all inflammation is the muscles around the bones swelling up and putting them out of alignment. Like I'll notice for me, because I don't really eat any kind of grains. I mean, I never eat bread anymore. But like if I were to eat even just something that's slightly inflammatory for me, because my body's been so clean for so long, that my neck will go out. And it's almost like clockwork. Like, oh, I'll just splurge and have some corn chips. Like for me, that would be a splurge because it's a fried corn. And like a day or two later, my neck will be like super sore in one spot, and I'll have to go get to the chiropractor. So I can see it firsthand with myself, but I've also seen it over and over again with my clientele, that when you don't even have to go that extreme. I mean, I'm kind of talking extreme, but even just eliminating, like, let's say fast food, if someone's eating a lot of fast food, or just cookies, or just a couple different things, and they're like, wow, I feel so much better. So that's basically what I do. And I also help them to kind of create a daily meditation practice and journaling, because I think journaling and meditation go hand in hand. When we start to meditate, we start to see ourselves. And all I say to them is like, hey, start with 1 to 2 minutes, and just all you have to do is sit down and go, hi, me, how are you today? Like just that one moment with your eyes closed, just to check in with yourself, is really, that's meditation right there. And then like journal about it. Journal about what you're feeling for 5 minutes. And like you said, with your gratitude journal, like, or with your gratitude, things online, like it becomes a gratitude journal, and you suddenly just start finding things to love about your life, and everything starts to change. And so, that kind of stuff is what I work on with people.
Yeah, no, that's, those are the 3 areas that, I really hit a stride. Like I don't know how much you followed like my other videos and stuff, but I was a stay-at-home dad for 2 years. I quit my job after 5 years, and partly because of that mushroom trip I was talking about, but just other things, leading up to like, I mean, the pure economics of it with daycare and stuff like that. I was making as much as it costs to send my kid to daycare so that I can work to pay to go to daycare. It's like that loop where I was just done, and it was a dead end job anyway. So it was like, I got to figure out what's next, and got to, I'm not making any money in this situation. So, the first year of the stay-at-home dad was mirroring the diet of a 3-year-old, and just like everything that he would eat is what I was eating, because I was making food for him, and it's just, processed food, sugar and cheese, right? Like what else does a 3-year-old eat, and so the first year was, and not doing much, like taking him to playgrounds and stuff and sitting there watching him play, like that kind of thing. And not saying I was completely inactive, but it's like I could have done a lot more with him, right? But I just took him places to watch him do stuff. And then so like after that winter and being, half cabin fever, but half that whole thing catching up. And I was going from my job before that, like walking in the woods all the time, like hiking, stuff like that. And after that, like winter was just brutal, and I think that's, I believe the timeline syncs up here, but anyway, that's why I started like this YouTube channel and stuff like that. And instead of journaling, it was like video journaling. The difference was that there was a response to it. There was people reaching out and connecting because they resonated with it, and so it was like the combination of like building that community and that social interaction that I didn't have. My only interaction was like other stay-at-home moms and my son, having this social community that I could talk about the things I wanted to talk about, was like huge for like starting moving me in the right direction. And yeah, providing that support group to want to like better myself and take a more holistic approach to life. And then it became easy to curb my diet and, plan out my food. Like that's the biggest thing. And in whatever diet you're trying to do, is planning it out is the key, because it's like out of haste, we make those bad decisions. Right. And so it was that journaling and the gratitude and then, meditation was the last thing I added. And I added that later this year. And that's when I really started to feel I was hitting a stride. And then unfortunately I started this job that like I wasn't ready to do, but I said, fuck it, and went with it. And I had to stop meditating, and I've still been eating pretty good, like not totally and not 100% like what you were talking about with a clean diet, but definitely better than I've been in most of my life. The thing I miss the most is that meditation right now. Like I stopped all that stuff. Well, I stopped that and journaling, and I'm like, oh, I'm craving meditation.
Isn't that interesting how when you don't, it starts to become something you crave. Like you don't feel quite right without it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so the meditation I was just starting to get into before I got this job offer and took this job. And which is one thing that's so weird about it. Even after meditating for 6 months, it was like the first 2 weeks of trying transcendental meditation, like where you hum like a mantra and trying to like hold a pitch, is when like everything like switched in my life and I got this awesome job offer and, had a crazy last 4 months of my life because of this. And it was like, I had these moments with, and to go back to the start where I was talking about vibrations and I'm trying to like kind of put this whole idea together. So that meditating deeply and maybe with a little weed or something kind of, get you a little bit into the now and out of your head. And just humming and playing with that frequency and that vibration had some reality bending moments that were more intense than like some psychedelic experiences.
I think that can reactivate the psychedelic experience, honestly, because that was one message that I got during my journey. And actually, I now that you're saying this, I remember I was toning all the vowels. Like I would start with A and just do A 3 times. And then the E, I would do really high pitch. I like to do it like a E. So it's like up in my head and I can feel like my whole skull like vibrating. And then for like the O, I do more like of a deep Om sound. And then the I don't even know what I do for that. But then the U is high again, like you. And what happens after I do each of those 3 times, I mean, talk about, how they talk about sound healing, you go and listen to crystal bowls. Well, you just totally like with inside your little crystal skull, you just resonated and broke up any stuck energy, any anxiety, any negativity, any even like maybe even instead of meditation, just doing that in the car. Sometimes if I don't have time to meditate, I'll be driving in my car and just toning the vowels into the windshield, A-E-I-O-U. And it's like, wow, like you get out of your car just feeling like a brand new person. So that's like a little hack. Like instead of taking time to meditate, if you don't have time, just unless you're on a bus, I guess if you're in your own car, you can tone on the way to work. Toning. It's amazing.
Yeah. Well, and think about it, how naturally pleasing a like beautiful harmony is. And it's not just the training of our ear from like, we've listened to so much music and we, associate all these good times in our life and dopamine releases to these times that we were hearing these harmonies. I don't believe in that, which I've heard about like sound or music, like theory and stuff like that. I think it's that frequency and that vibration is universal, and whatever, that spot where our spirit and body are combined, that harmony and like resonance pleases us. It's like, it's a dopamine release, to have like this combination of vibrations that hits this right frequency or whatever. And that's the same kind of feelings that psychedelics when we hum, or meditation when we're humming or whatever, and singing, we're like matching those frequencies in our own body. And like, I've done this in, I imagine you have done like salt float tanks.
Oh yeah. Deprivation. Yeah.
That's sometimes I try to be still and meditate and whatever. Sometimes I just like kind of hop around in the and like float and swim in the thing. And then sometimes I do like breathing exercises and stuff like that. But sometimes I really like when my ears are underwater and like humming within the water and how different it sounds. And like you said, doing the different high notes and low notes. And I like to take like a cannabis edible when I go in there, and with my eyes closed, I have some kind of faint visuals. And I've even noticed that by singing different pitches or humming different pitches, I can have different like colors and shapes, like change with the frequencies.
Yes, exactly. Like frequency has shape and color. And actually that reminds me, when I did ayahuasca, and the ayahuasquera was a woman, she came and sang to each of us in this like angelic melodic voice. And I wasn't having any visuals, and like not much was happening other than being really nauseous. And she came over to me and sat right in front of me and sang. And like with every vibration of her voice, like the psychedelics just went ping, ping, ping. And it totally activated everything. So, and I'm just remembering that when you're saying it. So really, yeah, I mean, I can see that, how everything just becomes more with sound.
Yeah. Yeah. And I haven't experimented with that enough. It's like most of my trips have been like listening to Pink Floyd or the Flaming Lips, which are great. And I'm not shitting on that, but it's like, I want to experience that kind of thing with a shaman, like chanting the Icaros and stuff like you're talking about, because I don't know, like I want to get like more, primal with like the kind of ceremony around using psychedelics that I've done. I'm scared to, but at the same token, it's like I kind of have to. I've done everything you could do with the hippie music. It's fun, and I'll definitely always go back to it. But it's like I do need to experience that kind of drum. I mean, well, I guess I've been around like drum circles at festivals and stuff, but I've been to festivals where the drum circle was way more transcendent with the psychedelic experience than the concert with the laser lights and stuff.
Yeah, actually that reminds me, I did have one psychedelic experience. I don't know if you'd call it psychedelic, but so I had a son that died when he was 14, and this is about 10 years ago, so I'm fine now. But it was right after he had died, and I did this they called it like a drum ceremony circle, like you travel on the drums. So we all laid down in a circle, I think with our heads in the middle, and then they drummed and sang. And I like went out of my body because I was grieving so hard anyway, but I went out of my body, and then I was shown these rainbow monkeys, and my son was a rainbow monkey, and he kind of came up to me with this big smile on his face, and he was with all these other rainbow monkeys, and they were swinging from the trees, and they were just so joyful and having the best time ever. And I mean, I wasn't on anything. It was just the drums and the grief and the sound. I think she was singing or something, but it was the most amazing experience because I was lucid. Like it was like I came out of it and I remembered everything. And that was super cool. So yeah, like sound journeying is also very amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's and that's when I listen to music in headphones on a psychedelic trip, there's like a choice A or B that you can go down. And that is like music with lyrics, because then you're going to be listening to the words and you're going to be influenced by that, or instrumental. And so I always my go-to, like I said, is like Pink Floyd, Grateful Dead, or Flaming Lips. All that have lyrics. I'm very emotionally tied during the psychedelic experience and also going forward with the lyrical themes of those songs have influenced my life because of that. Honestly, I'd have to admit that, like I've taken on the philosophy of those songwriters, let's say, right? And to where I've had moments, though, like I like jazz and like jazz fusion too, where it's like I've had some really cool trips listening to those frequencies that don't have lyrics and don't have that English language, the spells, like you were saying, right? And I've had very different experiences. And I know, like Stan, on your trip, you listen to the Johns Hopkins, and that's all instrumental pretty much until the end, right?
Yeah, 100% instrumental until the last like 3 songs. It's Beatles, Louis Armstrong, and then there's one that's sung in Spanish.
Oh wow!
Oh,
I'll have to
cool.
look that one up.
Yeah.
I think you're telling yourself, though, Ruben. Honestly, I think you're telling yourself that you're ready for for a new kind of musical experience on your next journey. You're ready for it.
Yeah. Oh, I am. Well, and I've I took a little bit of mushrooms down in Mexico with my wife like a month ago, I guess. We were staying for her brother's wedding, but I haven't done like a big trip in a while. I've just been focused on this new career path and stuff like that. And when Stan like texted me about, hey, the last episode we put out this year, let's do like a me and you contemplative about the last year, hopeful for the next year, go. And I've been trying to think about that. And I definitely need to trip next year, but I want to get more out of it than I have been and than I have, and I want to shake it up in a, a more rootsy way, I guess, because my go-to is headphones and laser lights and and stuff like that. So like, I need to I definitely this summer I tripped outside for the first time in a long time, like during the day, and like that's a must. I
just did that last weekend, and it was amazing by the river.
Yeah, yeah. Too many of my trips in the last decade or whatever have been late at night because I have to wait till everyone goes to bed, and I have to like not sing at the top of my lungs because I can't wake anyone up. So like, it's definitely getting outside and having semi-private, ability to sing at the top of your lungs or whatever. It, is pretty key. That's how I'm going to get the most out of it,
And I also have another suggestion, which is, when you do, since you haven't done ayahuasca yet, one thing they have you do is for the week before, they call it a dieta or a dieta. And you abstain from certain foods. Like I think you abstain from animal products. I'm not 100% sure, but like they have you cut back on your salt, no sugar, like kind of like a clean diet. And that could be good for you at least 3 days before, maybe, to cut out like processed foods or, real stimulating type foods.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't have to go off coffee, but you could.
I'd say that's, other than sugar, but I like binge on sugar. Like I can not eat sugar all week, and then it's like Sunday we're at someone's house and there's a dish of chocolate covered peanuts and I crush it, or whatever. Like it's weird with me and sugar like that.
I've been there.
Yeah, but I definitely the clean diet going in to the trip, I there's a reason that this culture, the ayahuasqueros and stuff like that have had that as part of their, ritual for longer than we've been a country, longer than any other institution that I've followed for mental and physical health has existed. These people have decided, hey, before you drink this tea of these 2 leaves we mix together, don't eat this stuff. They figured it out a long time ago.
Yeah, because they don't have the same profound experience, I don't think.
Yeah. Or they tend to have a worse experience. Like they've narrowed out, when the people have come and had a good time and people have come and had a bad time, they've been like, hey, what'd you eat the week before? What about you? Oh, okay. You ate a bunch of shit and he didn't, or whatever. Expand that out for generations. They've nailed it. They know what you're supposed to do before you try to, unlock the keys to the universe for a second,
And also alcohol, I know, plays a big part of it too. So yeah. So that's interesting.
Yeah. So when you did ayahuasca, was it in this country or did you go outside of the country?
I've only ever done it. I've done it 3 different occasions, actually 3 different occasions, but 2 of those times I did it 2 nights in a row. And I wouldn't say I feel way more profound from this last mushroom journey than from those. Like I got a lot more out of it. I think it's different for everyone. And each time I went for someone else. I went to kind of like accompany someone. So I think it was kind of more like I wasn't really feeling called to do it. It was more like, okay, I'll do it with you. They weren't bad journeys, and I did have some amazing visions that took me a long time to process. I think I'm still processing them even years later. I had this one vision where it was a combination of Mother Mary and the goddess Yamaya, who's the goddess of the ocean. And she's just all flowy and aqua. And I was at the end of my trip and I was in the bathroom on the toilet and I, just looked to the side and there's Mother Mary mixed with Yamaya, like this one vision together. And the message was, I'm here for you. You're always taken care of. You are so loved. Your mother loves you. Just that mother love energy. And I carry that with me still to this day. So like things like that I've experienced during other experiences. And it's always the same message, like you're loved, you're taken care of, you're held. We're here for you, and that's really the most beautiful message of all.
Yeah. Yeah. And even when I've gotten scary messages or been scared of the message or whatever, it's always been from a place of love. It's been like, they're scaring me because I need to be scared.
Yeah, like wake the fuck up.
You're right. And it's a parental kind of advice at that point. I've felt like the spirits have been tricksters at some time. I've been I remember years ago I was convinced that this one strain of mushrooms that my friend had grown didn't like me. And that I could do other mushrooms, but not this strain because they were trying to fuck with me, like that they were tricksters. And, but it still wasn't like demonic or anything like that. It was like always still out of love, out of fun kind of thing.
Have you had, so this happened to me once when I ate THC because me and pot don't really get along and I overdosed on it. And this was just recently, actually. Have you had it where you feel like the psychedelics are telling you bad things about certain people in your life, like warning you against them? Because that happened to me twice. When I was like, oh.
I've had that.
You have?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Actually, that's kind of like started the falling out of me and like my probably best friend at the time. And it wasn't in the moment of the trip, but it was afterwards that I kind of just like, it kind of unravels true colors and you can kind of see people for what they are and who they are around you. And maybe it was just me becoming more aware to my own situation. I'm not sure, but I've definitely experienced that as well.
Okay. Yeah. Well, it was the same person that had told me about in each, like with the pot and also with the mushrooms. I remember I was being warned against this person who I really care about. So I'm like, huh. And so I'm just
Mhm.
more on my guard. I'm not like, get out of my life, but it's just, I think it's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, the same thing. And for me, it was after smoking too. So,
So interesting.
Yeah. Now that you mention it, I do remember I kind of wrote it off because it ended up not being a big deal. Like there's nothing wrong with this person. And it was more me being fucking weird. And, I was 17, 18 doing acid every weekend. Like, which I don't condone now. I wouldn't condone that. I just, I tell that as part of my story. That I became convinced that my best friend, this was like junior year of high school. I stayed at this kid's house all the time. Like his family is my family, and I convinced myself that he was like evil and was like like a succubus or whatever. It was like fucking my shit up really bad, and I had to get away from him. Like he was dragging me down, and I just like deteriorated the fuck out of this friendship for no reason other than I just got these vibes, and like totally fucking ruined a friendship that took like we were friends after high school, but it ruined our high school friendship. And like I said, it ended up being completely unwarranted, like he's perfectly fine. And we've been friends since and whatever, never to the same level, but we maybe talk once or twice a year, but it's always, cordial. But yeah, I did feel that. And it wasn't like during any certain trip, but definitely from like tripping all the time and being very, tripping every weekend and being very like introspective during the middle of the week because you're coming down off of successive trips. That was like kind of the message that I formed from that those experiences. It was like, you got to get this dude out of your life.
yeah.
But there was no reason. Like it didn't benefit or harm either of us, or probably only harm because we just didn't have as much fun, I guess. I don't know. But it didn't matter. There was no big cosmic thing that ever happened, unless it hasn't happened yet and it was just a total long game and whatever. But
or maybe he was a bad influence on you doing too much acid and your higher self was saying, hey, knock it off.
Yeah, well, I didn't listen to that then. Yeah. I just started doing acid with different people. But
I wanted to ask, going back a little bit to, well, I had two questions, I guess. The first one being, in the video that you sent Ruben, there was some similarity that I experienced as well after a mind-opening experience like that. And it was the inability really to speak ill will about others and talk behind people's backs. And I feel like that's something that doesn't really get talked about, or at least preached about, about these medicines. And I think it's really important because it's such a small thing that is proof of becoming a better person, And like now, whenever I'm talking about somebody, it could be talking behind somebody without them being in the room. I have to like preface it, with like this 3-minute type thing, this long drawn out explanation of how I mean no bad energy and no ill will by what I'm about to say. And I just thought that was really cool that you brought that up.
I find it physically painful to talk about people now. Like, and if it does happen, I feel so bad about it. Like, oh, like I used to get dopamine hits, like, ooh, somehow you feel like you're better than or something and now it's just like, if it's happening, I'm just like, oh God, it's like, it's painful. And I think that's what I think, that psychedelics are very benevolent. Like at least they are for me, like they want you to be your best self.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then so they
No, I
imbue
totally
that
agree.
message and it sticks with you. Like it stuck with me. It's definitely part of my life now. Like I'm just not interested in talking smack.
Yeah, no, and I like I said, I think it's really important, especially for like, I want to say, especially for men, because I feel like there's like a one-upmanship that happens a lot, like even just between friends or events or situations, that whenever you're around person or people that you're comfortable around, that part of you comes out, and or it has it in my past, and that was a really big eye-opening thing for me. And the second thing I wanted to ask was more along the lines of the diet regimen or lifestyle that you've chosen. And I was wondering, I've realized this while being introspective after digesting these substances and smoking and whatever I've done, that I've come to the conclusion that, or at least the idea that stress manifests itself within like fat within a person, or at least myself, or it could even be like pain, muscle ache, things like that. I don't know, have you ever thought of that, or is that something that you've noticed?
You mean like in your fat cells?
Maybe not scientifically, but like, I guess there'd be no real way to prove that, um
I just want to get clear on the question. So you're saying like that stress creates fat? Is that?
yes, essentially, or like it just, I feel like because I like gained a decent amount of weight. I used to be really kind of unhealthily skinny. Like I was 6'4", like 175, and that was just too skinny.
Uh-huh.
And then I gained weight and like flipped that coin, and I worked my way all the way up to like 290. And now I'm working my way down from that. And I've just been realizing as I've lost weight, it's like these different stressors are coming up while I meditate or do yoga. And I just deal with them in that moment. And then I'm able to release it instead of having it stored within me.
Oh,
And I
I
feel like there's
totally
something
agree.
going on there.
Yeah, and I can't say 100% positive, but I know that I've read things on fat being created by stress. Like our fat cells so what our body does when we eat is, I'll just relate it to eating, but when we eat toxic foods, which is stressful, is it sends it to the fat cells, because the fat cells are considered the outside of our body, because it wants to protect our organs and the things inside of us. So it sends it. If it doesn't know what to do with it, it's like, I'll process it later. I send it to the fat cells. And I think we do that with emotions. Like, I'll process that later. I'm going to send it to the fat cells. I'm stressed out. I can't deal with this right now. I'm going to send it to the fat cells. So like, it's an energetic fat. I totally believe that. I mean, I've been able to gain 5 pounds in a couple days if I've been really stressed out. I'm like, what the heck just happened? Or if I go through something super stressful, like just a situation, I'm like, whoa. I think for women's bodies, we notice it a lot easier. But yeah, I totally agree with you on that. Stress can totally cause weight gain and fat storage.
Yeah. And I was talking to my girlfriend the other day. I was saying, I feel the most ideal situation as like with your human body is to have it so that it's just that constant machine of no excess, and the input output cycle, like no excess and just energy burned, output, and then now time for more input. And I feel like that would just be like the optimal running, I guess.
Yeah, I feel that is optimal. And what I say too, like, I've done so much studying on the body and how everything works. And I think most of us are putting way too much, I'm going to use air quotes, fuel into our body. People are so obsessed with getting enough protein, with getting enough this, with getting enough that. And it's like, think about a Ferrari. If you just keep driving it and driving it and putting more gas in and driving it and putting more oil and putting more gas, you're going to wear it out, even if it's a Ferrari and it's the most amazing car. If you treat it gently and you don't overfuel it, and you don't, I don't want to say overfuel because you can only fuel a car so much, but you know what I mean? If we don't, like for us, if we put a bunch in and then we go work out a bunch to burn it off, and then we put a bunch more in, and it's like, that's kind of a disorder as well. So I think it's just like eating just the right amount, moving, even with exercise. I think people way overdo it. They stress their bodies out way too much. Like working out 20 minutes, 30 minutes, maybe maximum 45 minutes a day. It doesn't have to be 2 hours. Because then you're like, oh, I'm so hungry. And then you eat twice as much. And they even have proven that people that run marathons and all that don't really lose any weight because they feel like they deserve a lot more food. And so it becomes that vicious cycle of eating and burning and eating and burning. So like what I've done is just limit my amount of food that I put in. And it's not in a deprivation way. It's just kind of like, I'm not like, you start to feel more satisfied when you're eating whole real foods like salads and superfoods, which are things like green powders and protein powders and stuff. You just feel more satisfied than you do on junk food, because junk food's never ending. You just never are satisfied. It's like a bottomless pit.
Yeah. And going off the car analogy, it's like we have to be sure that you're eating the right things. So if the car would be giving it diesel when it needs unleaded, or our bodies, junk food instead of whole foods.
Right. I mean, just look at what the earth provided. If the earth made it, feel free to eat all you want, like apples and fruit and vegetables. And like, we get ourselves into trouble when it's the man-made food.
Yeah.
So the earth didn't make Cheetos.
Yeah. The earth didn't make orange dye number 7 either.
Yeah. I have a problem, with, because I'm a big guy too. And like, if I'm going to eat, like I will have a tendency to overeat and eat too many calories, but I agree with you, like about too much fuel in the bodies, because like, I think that's the thing. Like, I think 3 meals a day is too much. Like, I think people are too infatuated. Like you said, they were infatuated with like numbers and protein, how much protein, how much, carbs, all this stuff. I think people are too worried about like when to eat and your metabolism and stuff like that. And like, I really dig the intermittent fasting, and that's what I try to do. I don't really like keep track of the window, but I'm like, I don't eat breakfast. I do drink coffee in the morning, but coffee and water is all I have until like the 2 rules I have for eating is like, I don't eat until 1, and at some point between 1 and when I go to bed, I have to have like a big, like kind of superfood salad that I put like beets and broccoli sprouts and like all these things that I've kind of like picked up from different health podcasts and stuff of like foods you need to eat. I'm like, if I have that for lunch or if I have that right before I go to bed, I have to get that in that window of 1 o'clock and bedtime. But by just having those 2 things where it's like, that's kind of simple to do, as long as you're not someone who wakes up like super hungry, the coffee gives me the energy to not like really worry about that. And, like I keep myself busy and I'm active as well, cause I'm working and I'm like walking around in the woods outside and stuff like that. And then if I can't make the salad or find a place to eat that or whatever, and I'm on the road, well, then I just eat like a Cliff Bar or something like that. And then I come home and I just like pound a huge salad. And then if for dinner, like if my boys want to go get cheeseburgers, I go get cheeseburgers with them, or whatever. Like I try to like make healthy stuff at home. But if it's like a late night that we got scouts or basketball and it's like tough to like plan what to eat and we just end up getting cheeseburgers, like I kind of justify that for the time being until I, further hone my skills at crafting and planning food throughout the week and adjusting it to schedules and stuff like that. I'm kind of mitigating the damage of those bad, hasty diet decisions,
I think that sounds really good. I mean, I do actually almost the exact same thing. I don't eat anything till 1 or 2, and I do have coffee, but I put fat in my coffee. I blend like coconut oil into it and medicinal mushrooms. I'm a mushroom lover of all kinds, like lion's mane and turkey tail. I don't know if you've heard of those things, but definitely you should look them up. They're brain food.
I'm growing both of them.
Oh, you are? Okay. So lion's mane is brain, like when your brain needs a hug. And so, and then I do the same thing. Like I have at least one big green salad or some kind of raw food, superfood. It sounds like you're doing really good with that. Have you noticed a difference in like your mental balance in your body?
Oh yeah. And you know what I'll tell you, it has rejuvenating healing properties, like it's and it's a lot of it has to do with what you were saying at the start about inflammation, like I've significantly reduced my inflammation. I have a significantly less fat, well, maybe not even fat. I maybe have a pretty as high a fat diet as I've ever had. The difference is it's better fats and way less salt, and like, instead of having French fries with 2 out of 3 meals of the day, you know, or something like that, or a bag of chips every day for lunch or breakfast even, or whatever, you know. It's like, I've just cut all that kind of out. And that's one of the biggest problems with processed foods and snack foods is the salt content, you know, that, and then if you're not drinking enough water, it's like this, you're kind of in a constant state of dehydration, you know, and so many people kind of live that way. You know, I live this lifestyle with like the guys I've worked with and like, you know, outdoor tough construction type guys and stuff like that. Like instead of coffee in the morning, they have 2 Mountain Dews, you know, like I've worked with a guy where every morning he got a bag of, well, what are the little like pretzel things with the cheese in the middle? I can't think of the name. I don't know, but yeah, but
the combos.
Yeah. He would get, I mean, it's 7 a.m. on the way to like working outside in like 100-degree heat all day, would drink 2 20-ounce Mountain Dews and a bag of combos, you know?
It makes you wonder how people stay alive on that. Like, how are you functioning on that?
I don't know. Yeah. And I would be getting, you know, a breakfast burrito because from a gas station breakfast burrito, because I thought it sounded better than eating combos or whatever. But, you know, it's like, I don't know. I don't know if it was just age that like I was able to do that and it didn't seem to bother me. But, you know, in my late 20s, like my knees were like starting to give out and I was like super worried about that. But that's definitely been a thing. Like my knees and my back were starting to really mess with me until I really started, paying attention to my holistic health, not just my diet, you know, just everything, being aware and having a focus in my life of self-improvement. You know, and that's been another big thing, realization I've had this year is that like, you need to always be growing. Like there's no time in your life where you should be like, well, this is where I wanted to be and where I wanted to end up. Like you should always have a goal. That's how you stay alive, you know? and you can't do that if you're down on it. If you're like, this sucks, my life sucks, you're not going to be able to, well, I mean, you're able, but I mean, it's not going to be likely that you're going to grow, that you're going to have something to be striving for, you know? And, you know, that's just been a big thing for me that I hope to not only continue, but foster in other people and, you know, going forward into the next year and other years after that.
Yeah. And I think that's the biggest thing is to get motivated. And it sounds like for you, and I know for me as well, the thing that motivated us was avoidance of pain. And usually that's a bigger motivator for most people. And like, you're like, I don't want my back to get any worse. I don't want this to get worse. And for me, I had all kinds of health challenges. And then once you start eating healthy, you become addicted to the salads. You're like, oh my God, I didn't have my salad today. I feel not as good. It's like, you know, it's like the same as getting high or something. You're like, I gotta have my salad.
Yeah. Well, pain, whether it's emotional or physical, is the biggest challenge to our biggest obstacle in life. And our biggest obstacle in life is ourself. And unfortunately, if we are in pain, that can drown out ourself. You know, think of how many people, you know, physical pain, obviously, that just get hopeless and can't do anything and whatever, and you can't get over the pain. And then, you know, how many times do we see in society today that leads to painkillers and painkiller addiction and opiates and that whole cycle, because, you know, where physical pain becomes severe emotional pain, and just stops lives to the point that it kills them, you know?
Yep. And some people would rather die than change their diet. There are those people. And we see it all the time with cancer, I'm not saying that those people chose that, but, you know, with all kinds of ailments, like, oh no, they just really don't want to look at what their habits are.
Well, I remember specifically, I was behind, you know, a couple years ago behind someone in, at our grocery store, and, they had a cart that the whole bottom was 2 liters of different, like, non-diet soda. And then the whole top of it was like different chips and then big tubes of the cheapest ground beef that they have at the store that like didn't even have a label on it. It was just a white label. It said beef or something like that, you know, like, and just the unhealthiest thing that you could even picture. And, you know, they were like barely able to walk and obese, and, you know, they're, should have been in the motorized cart probably, but, you know, and out of breath and everything. And my son like said something, you know, like he's like 7 or something like that, and was like, that's a lot of junk food or something like that. And the person you could see was like, yeah, I know. And I know that's why the way I am the way I am. And like, I know that's why I feel like shit and whatever, but was like, yeah, well, it's too late now to do anything about it, or something like that, you know, like, yeah, I know, but whatever, you know, I'm not going to change. And
food's an addiction just like any other substance.
It is. Yeah, sugar for sure. You know, sugar and salt. Like it's yeah, and for so long the healthy view of diets and stuff has been so damning of fat, right? You know, like the 80s and 90s was like, get fat out of your life, you know, and either increased more salt or introduced more salt into the diet to make up for the flavored, you know, loss, or introduce these random new chemicals that they were, you know,
substituting for fat.
And, yeah, you know, like, do you remember Olean, like that the oil they were using for chips to make them fat free?
Oh no.
This was like in the 90s, and it was this new chemical, and it was called Olean, and it was a big deal around where I went to high school, because the town I went to high school was Olean, New York, and that was spelled the same way. And so like people, when you ran into them and you said you were from this town, like thought it was funny because this fat that they put in Doritos, and there was a whole range of Lay's chips that were labeled wow, and if it said wow, that meant it had Olean in it, and Olean made a certain percentage of the population have what they termed anal leakage.
Oh no. Oh, that's horrible.
And so it had these terrible, greasy, runny poops. And they didn't even take it off the market, unbelievably. They just started, they switched something and made it better, or I don't know exactly what happened to that. But I think the point I was getting there is like, that was what they considered health, right?
Right. They made fat like, the enemy.
Hey, yeah, you can still eat those shitty chips, but we're going to put more sugar in them and this grease that may make you shit your pants. But hey,
but don't mind that.
There's zero fat.
You're going to be healthy.
Right. You know, to where now the health advocates and the people giving health advice can finally say, hey, why don't you just eat natural stuff? You know, like, why don't you eat a balanced natural diet? Why don't you not eat meat and cheese with every meal? Try that, you know, and it's such a more like approachable and healthy way that we can look at diet now, you know, like you don't need to buy like crazy products and stuff like that. You know, like you don't have to get like Nutrisystem and have all these like meals shipped to your house from a factory and all these things that we have like attributed with a healthy diet. You know, I'm glad to see that the overwhelming aim of health coaching, you know, is focusing on whole, clean foods.
Yep. Lots more plants. Just eat a lot of plants. Not saying that all animal products are bad, but just minimize them. Yeah.
Yeah. And you know, I minimize the amount of meat and cheese, but it's also, if you are going to eat meat and cheese, better quality, you know,
humanely raised.
Beef, yeah. You know, humane raised and no growth hormones and, you know, and all of that. Spend a little more, get higher quality, and eat less of it, you know, and that's where I've started. I don't think I'd ever get to a point where I would just cut out meat from my diet, but I would get to a point where I only eat it 3 times a week, you know, and it's a badass grass-fed or venison steak that I, harvested myself or something like that. Like I think that's a big thing where I think and I definitely listen to like Joe Rogan a lot, and I'm into hunting and stuff like that, but it's all about that like humane way, like the feedlots of meat and the chemicals that are given to them and their quality of life at a standard like industry raised animal is awful. And that's one thing I aim to totally remove that from my life as soon as I can. Like that's one thing I can see eye to eye with vegans or anyone that kind of doesn't eat any animals. And I think like that, the kind of eating with intent, if you're going to eat animal products and eating with intent and respect, I think that's something that carries over into that psychedelic world as well. Is like, okay, you're in harmony, your vibrations are in harmony with the vibrations of these animals, as long as you're like conscious and aware and respectful of that, that circle of life, with eating animals.
Yeah. And being grateful for all of that.
Grateful. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that you're right. Like, as we become more awake and awaken to ourselves, and we're doing these psychedelics for a reason, because we want to be more awake, we become more conscious of the food we're eating in that kind of way. Like, how are these animals being treated? Where are these vegetables coming from? Are they being shipped in from Abu Dhabi? Or like I bought flowers the other day, and then there was a sticker that said Dubai. And I'm like, I bought flowers from Dubai? Shit. Why are they selling flowers from Dubai? Like, just being more aware. And even me, sometimes I'm like, oops, missed that one. But, reading labels and paying attention and caring, because we vote with our dollar. Every dollar we spend is a vote for that thing. And so that's where it starts.
And we vote with our fork. I've heard that too. That I agree with that. Like what you eat. I mean, look at like the switch to grass-fed beef, right? That people make that choice changed the industry. Not even a decade ago, you couldn't go to your standard, Kroger or whatever, main grocery store chain is out west or whatever, but that you couldn't go there if you were like, hey, do you have any grass-fed beef? To be like, I don't know what you're talking about, to where now there's entire sections of like the grass-fed department of the store. And that isn't the elected officials that were voted into office to represent their constituents. Like, that's not what changed that. What changed that is people's choice of what they put in their body. And it showing you're willing to pay for quality, you're willing to, seek out quality. We've changed the industry by doing that.
Well, what's also changed it is things like podcasts and YouTube, because the real people are talking, and people are actually getting educated instead of commercials educating us, and the news, which is mostly led by by the commercials. We're actually getting real information now, and people are like, wait a minute, I've been duped. I don't want that.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the same goal with why I started talking on YouTube about psychedelics, is like, that's how we change that shit too, as we start talking about it.
That's how I found you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So one last thing, because we're at like an hour and a half or so. You mentioned that you recently did combo, and I never heard of it, and I Googled it after you emailed me about it, but can you tell us about that real quick?
Yeah, so it's not psychedelic at all. In fact, there's nothing psychedelic about it. It's basically a cleansing. They call it a medicine. It's another ceremony that you do, and the frog is from South America, and it's like a bicolor green frog, and there's a venom that's in it. And so what they do is they squeeze the venom out of it, and they like dry it. And so I've done it here in the US. I have a friend that's a shaman, and he and his wife do it for me. And they burn little, you've probably seen people with little scars, but they burn little circles onto your arm, like with like a matchstick. And then they put this, it's like, it looks kind of like a booger. They scrape it all up from this card thing. Anyway, they put it on you, and then the venom gets released into you. and you don't eat that morning. Like, so I was fasting, and it takes about 15 to 20 minutes, but you get really hot. It's almost like a niacin flush. Your whole body gets hot. And then I had to drink 2 liters, which is 2 quarts, half a gallon of water within a 15-minute period right before they did it. And then you just purge. But what comes out, it's interesting because for me, what came out was a lot of bile. So it was kind of bright yellow, and it lasts about 20 minutes. And then they take the little things off your arm, and then you just kind of feel really blissful. But what it does is they say the way that it works for like the South Americans, or why they started doing it, is it cleanses your aura so completely that animals cannot sense your humanness. So it's really great for hunting. It's also great for anybody that's sick, because my friend swears by it, because she says she never gets sick during the winter. It just basically cleans out any bad toxins out of you. And I did it just because she was telling me that like it's like energetically cleansing. And it's also like if you have any, like I've had history of yeast and mold and fungus just from childhood, and it cleanses all of that out. It kind of just it's like hitting a reset button on your health. And so I've done 2 so far, and I'm going to do 1 more this Sunday. They say a series of 3 is great. But I did it just because as you can tell, I'm a curious person and I'm into health. And I'm like, well, what am I here for? Let me just experiment with this. And I just feel like it's something interesting to do. And I felt really euphoric the next day. Like that day I felt okay. And then the next day, like super euphoric. And then just feel really good and strong, like super strong afterwards.
Huh.
So that's the best way I can describe it. That's been my experience.
I mean, yeah, no, that's wild. Yeah, there's so many, my education is in like evolutionary biology and ecology and stuff like that. And it's very interesting for me to think about like toxins that animals and plants put off and how it affects us, well, I mean, I don't know if you've ever read about or heard about the Sonoran desert toad that you can squeeze these venom sacs on it and then dry that, and that's DMT. That's a form of DMT.
I've had that.
Yeah. Oh, you
I just did it once in that same place where I did my first ayahuasca journey. They were doing it, and they were catching toads in the desert and doing it. But I don't think I had a very strong dose. But anyway, yeah.
Yeah.
I learned a lot about that on, you know about Hamilton's Pharmacopoeia?
Oh, yeah.
He did a whole series on that, or a whole show on that one.
Yeah, and Michael Pollan talks about it in his book, How to Change Your Mind and stuff. And I don't know if I'll ever do that or not, but it interests me that it's a venom from a toad and it has that effect. This Cambo is a venom from a toad and it has this effect. And it's, almost, it sounds, just as impactful, but just in a completely different way for, completely different reason.
And you got to wonder, like, how did they find out about all this stuff? Like, who was the first experimenter? And like, I'm throwing up. It must be good for me. Like, how did they figure out that was something that you want to do?
Yeah. Ayahuasca boggles my mind. In the middle of the friggin' jungle, they were like, hey, this vine and this leaf, mix them together, boil them, get them to a certain temperature, cool it down, drink it, sing these songs, and then it's going to be cool. Like, how did that happen? And that had to happen so long ago. That's why, I appreciate drugs that have been synthesized or discovered, through chemical processes, drugs that have been discovered that way. I respect them. LSD, I think is an amazing thing for for humanity, but there's this level of respect that goes back to like ayahuasca and mushroom ceremonies and the native kind of usage and cultural usage of them, that is so respectful because it's so old, and that any scientific research that we might come up with to like suggest that you shouldn't go through one of those ceremonies or something like that is kind of like, it doesn't matter, because it's like, that's coming from no experience. And this has thousands and thousands of years of experience.
And I mean, the people that are doing these psychedelic journeys, like Paul Stamets is one example. Like, they're changing the planet. They're helping so many people. And so, they're awakening their consciousness in that way. So there's no way you can look at that and say that that's wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. And, and along the same regards of how I, saying I respect the cultural usage of the drugs, I respect a more, kind of like, to tie it back into diet, I respect like a hunter-gatherer type of diet of like, okay, most of the time eat greens and nuts and fruits because that's what you're going to find. And then every now and then you get a kill or something like that, and like that, like that's kind of how I approach my diet is, to be as rootsy as I like everything else, I guess.
And try and eat seasonally too. And it's actually cheaper to buy blueberries when they're in season and squash in the winter, like that helps too.
Well, yeah. So our, my place up in New York, we kind of own with some family friends that are, he's kind of like my uncle or whatever. And he has an 8-acre blueberry farm that's in the middle of the woods, that we could just like drive a golf cart over to. And like some of these bushes are 25 years old at this point. And, so we go there in the spring or early summer. And I mean, first of all, if we're up there 3 or 4 days or whatever, we eat nothing but blueberries. We go watch a sunrise and a sunset up there and eat our weight in blueberries while we're up there. And then we also take home as many Tupperware things as we can fit in the car of blueberries. So like we freeze them or we make pie or jam or whatever. For months, like there's just blueberry everything at our house, and, I buy blueberries too during the year, but it's not the same as like white, organic sun, just like fresh picked, blueberries. But yeah. And then also, during wild mushroom seasons, like chanterelle seasons and stuff like that, I eat a lot more mushrooms than I eat during the rest of the year as well. I get it like every meal with chanterelles almost this year.
Yeah, me too. I live in Oregon, so they're prolific here, and they were so cheap at the stores even. And I need to go mushroom hunting myself, but that's awesome. I love finding wild food.
Yeah. Yeah. But, so it's, probably a pretty long podcast at this point, but it was great talking to you. And,
it was really fun. I learned a lot.
Yeah, no, me too. And we'll definitely have to do this again at some point.
Yeah, for sure. I'll let you know when I do another trip of some kind.
Okay. And do you have anything you want to plug or?
Well, if people want to check me out, they can go to purejoyplanet.com. And I've got all kinds of free recipes to get you started and little mini free juicing courses and classes. And we have an upcoming January course that's 4 weeks to help people do everything we talked about. Get off the junk, get onto the healthy food, and make your own home food at home that's healthy and going to heal your body. So
awesome. As always, thank you for listening to the Help Find the Others podcast. Please don't forget to check out our Discord server to connect with our growing community. The link to join can be found in the description. And if you feel like donating to our channel to help us grow, a link to our Patreon can also be found in the description, as well as some cryptocurrency wallet addresses. If you would like to be a guest on the podcast or have any questions about these topics, please email helpfindtheothers@protonmail.com. If you would like to leave a voicemail or a text message question for a future episode, Stan, what's that number again?
567-233-1335.
Okay, guys, thanks again. And until next time, let's help find the others.